Here's a tutorial for using Pro Tools together with Drumvolution. Pro Tools is obviously the industry standard in the world for audio recording, and Drumvolution is an excellent drum tool for comes with thousands and thousands of samples, thousands of sounds, and hundreds of sequences already pre-built for you, and some really good tools for making drums kind of pop. So the first thing we got to do is create a new track. We'll go here to track, new, go to mono, change it to stereo, change this to instrument track, and we click create. And then if you don't see this inserts A through E, you just have to click here and make sure inserts A through E is checked. These are the different slots right here, 1 through 5, or A through E slots, so you can have 5 different plugins. Usually you'll just have one, sometimes 2 or 3 for effects tracks, or tracks with effects. But anyway, let's click the first slot. We'll click multi-channel plugin, go to instrument, and we'll choose Contact 7. That's the latest version of Contact as of this recording. We click Drumvolution, and then double click this first Drumvolution setting here. Let it open up. It takes a few seconds. And here we have Drumvolution. And first thing you want to do is you want to go to this welcome button and click it, drop it down to factory, and then get your choose a pre-made sequence. And each of these sequences is not only a different sequence of MIDI triggers, it's also they all each have their own sounds. And so it's a really cool collection. I'm going to go to, let's see, I created Jack Me Up, so I'm going to go to Factory. Garage, and then Jacked 1. All right, so now we have a sequence. Let's click the sequence button here. These are your 4 windows, your 4 main windows. And now you can see the sequence. Each of these colored dots is a MIDI trigger. The horizontal lanes are for each drum sound. So that's the kick, snare, a little different percussion sounds. You can press the play button, see how they sound, see how this particular one sounds. So you can see that this kick is being triggered in this lane. So what you can do is you can add a kick here, for instance. Maybe bring this back down and add one here. Let's get rid of that one and go here. Add one here. Stuttered snares. All right, so I just adjusted this sequence enough to make a custom song. And next thing you want to do is you want to focus on the drum sounds. So if you don't like, for instance, the kick, the snare, you can change those, and you've got thousands of different sounds to select from using your mouse roller. You can also randomize. You can select these right away from this menu, or you can walk through them, step through them like this, or you can randomize like this. I like to use that random feature. The problem with the random feature is it's if you hear one you like and then you pass it up, it's hard to find it in this long list. So let's go with the first one, nano click. See how that sounds. Let's step through it. Whoops, I was going through the snare. What we need to do, actually I like that snare. Let's select kick. Now we'll cycle through the kicks. That one sounds good. And you can do the same with any of these sounds just by clicking up here. Every time you click, you hear it. So that tells you how to change all these. If you really want to dig deep into modification, you can click this plus sign, and this moves the whole. This gives you the kick, the page for the whole kick lane, and or you could go. I forget all these different options here, but this is a great feature. This little button right here, it's the same. You'll notice it's the same icon as this, which means random. A really cool feature. You just click that random button, it'll randomize the kick, the whole kick pattern. And then you can further play with it. Here, let's find a random thing that we like. So that one's cool. So we need a bigger kick on the beginning. This one's too loud. All right, that's cool. And now let's talk about layering. You can layer, each of these sounds can have up to 3 layers: drum, transient, and layer. And so pick whatever sound you want to modify. Let's I like that kick. Maybe we can put another. I like the drum sound. It's a good basic drum sound, but maybe we could put a different transient in there. So let's click transient, and actually let's go to X and Y window, and that shows you this X and Y layout where you can fade between the drum sound, the transient, and the layer, or have all 3 by putting it in the middle, or have just the drum and transient by putting it like halfway between. But let's focus on the transient, so we'll put that red mark here. And we will click the kick, and then we can randomize it here. Each time I press this random button, it'll randomly select a different transient sound. That's pretty cool. Let's put it in the middle, see how it sounds. Yeah, I like that. Sounds like a basketball. Now we can select the layer sound if we want. Go to layer. Yeah, I like that actually. Same thing, you can change that to a different layer. Whoops. I was changing something else. I have to click the layer button first. And then that's cool. Now let's put it to the more toward the middle. All right, let's hear how that sounds. Press play. Sounds like drive-by shooting in rhythm. All right, there's a lot of adjustments you can make. This application has tons of different ways to adjust things. You can pan things, like you can pan the transient to the left and the layer to the right. You could have different filters, different attack and decay, and that's just for this window. You can go to the mix window and get even more cool stuff. I like this analog feature down here, which lets you create a dynamic where if you put this into bring this intensity up a little, it will kind of randomize the whatever sound you have selected. So I have kick and layer selected, so it's going to randomize that over time. So you can randomize the pan. That's really cool. It's a little bit too extreme. Yeah, see, that's a nice subtle effect. Sounds cool to do that with percussion. So let's do the same thing with the percussion, but more extreme. And then this percussion and this percussion. Let's see how that sounds. Yeah, that's some really cool dynamics there. It's changing it as it plays. You don't have to govern what those changes are. You just govern the amount of it using these levers. All right. So now that we have that done, again, there's a lot of different things you can play with, decays and LFOs and pitch, for instance. Pitch is a good thing to play around with. Let me show you how that works. Kick. Make sure we're in kick mode. Make sure we're in the drum sound of the layer, and then we can do a coarse adjustment for the. I'll press play and I'll show you how that sounds. That brings down the frequency of the main drum sound up. That sounds good right there. And then this is the fine adjustment. This is not quite as broad of a sweep. And you can do the same thing for any sound. So let's select the snare. And adjust the pitch. That sounded good where it was. Let's see. Decay. Doesn't affect every sound. Every sound is a little bit different. Anyway, you can play with all these. So that's a pretty good track that we just created. Okay, the last thing we'll do in Drumvolution for the time being is to switch over to the mix page, and by clicking this button, we've already seen the mix page, but and I showed you some of these features here and here and here, but not here. So this is the actual mixer, and each of these vertical lanes is one of the instruments, and you can click the instrument here, 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 and a red light appears over each one. So whichever one it has the red light over, let's say you want to adjust the snare, you just click the snare, red light will show up, and then all of these adjustments for all of these things up at top here will now adjust that instrument only. And then, so this is like a focus control. You want to adjust the kick. Now that all of these will be adjusting the kick only. So make sure you switch when you want to adjust an instrument. You got to click that instrument first. Then the volume control is here for the kick, and then if you want to reduce the volume of the snare, for instance, you click snare, then the volume control is here. Pan control, that's left and right. So let's say you want to pan the snare way over to the left. You can do that. Same thing with the percussion. I often like to put one percussion left and one right. So I'll click this one. Now remember, I already did this random pan thing, so that pretty much takes care of that, but we can still adjust this one to the left a little bit more by moving pan to the left, and this one will adjust a little bit to the right, and gives you a little more dynamics. Okay, and I actually don't like that instrument, so let's change that one. Let's change that to it's supposed to be a clap. Yeah, as if that really sounds like a clap. Alright, so let's change that to let's randomize it. Must be one of the transients or something. Yeah, that's what it is. You can see those transients are really long. The last one we had was really long. So this one's shorter. I'm just going to turn it off. I'm going to go to the X plus Y, and layer 3 is what that sound is. So I'm going to bring this over to here, and that'll remove layer 3 completely and have only the main drum sound, which is this one, and the transient sound, which is this one. So now let's listen. Actually, we got to bring it all the way up here. And let's keep going on the sound here. Then we could go into the mix window. I like that better. We go into the mix window and we can adjust the volume. Maybe bring that one up a little bit. Oh, can't go up anymore. Well, what you can do if you run into that problem, which is common when you're mixing anything, including mixing in Pro Tools, it's actually people joke about it a lot because you want to turn it up to 11, 10 being the max. So what you could do is you could back down everything else. Press kick, back down, press snare, back that down to 9, hat, back that down, cymbal, that sounds okay. Hat open is pretty loud. That's pretty loud. So let's play it. Let's play it now, and we can boost the whole volume here, up at the top right, and that'll bring it back up. And whatever you had loudest will now be louder. Yeah, I like that better. And actually, we could go even more extreme. Bring this kick and the snare further down. The hat still sticks out a bit. That one sticks out a little bit. That one sticks out a little bit. And that. So let's bump it up the whole volume even more. Yeah, it's a little bit too extreme, so I'm going to bring that back up just a little bit more. This kick and the snare. Okay, now never forget to save your project every now and then. Pro Tools does have an autosave on it, but I think you have to set it up. So every once in a while, just press Control S on your keyboard. That saves your project. And then, so now we are finally ready. We did most of what we need to do in Drumvolution. You could still make adjustments after you work on your song. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to export this into Pro Tools, because right now it's not truly synchronized. I mean, it is synchronized with the clock, but it's not. The sequencer it's using the built-in sequencer right now, which is this one, and you can't really use that in a song. Unless it's a really, really simple song. I guess you could, but you don't really want to do that. So what you want to do instead is you click this down at the bottom right, the MIDI export button. After it turns green, you click it again, then you drag it up into the instrument track that you're working in, the drum track. It has to be the drum track, because remember, that's what we set up Drumvolution in. For some reason this doesn't say Drumvolution anymore. I'll double click it. And so yeah, you always have to drag it to the whatever track you have Drumvolution set up in, which is the Contact player, Contact 7. All right, and then let's talk about this grid and slip button. The grid button, you see all these many vertical lines in here. In the tracks, that's the grid, and you can set up the grid using, let's go ahead and close this out, Drumvolution, and let's talk about Pro Tools a little bit more. The grid, you can set up how much space you have between each of these grid marks by going in here and clicking on the grid little note, and then you can put whatever note you want, like eighth notes. That way, when you expand it down at the bottom right, you can either click the plus and minus, or you can click each one and hold it and then drag. And as you drag, the whole thing expands. And as you drag it, the grid also expands. And you see there's a moment right there when you can see the accents of the grid. The blue lines instead of the gray ones. Anyway, and now that we have it expanded, you'll be able to see more when you change the grid. See, I have changed it to 16th notes. Usually 16th is a little bit too tight, so we'll bring it back to quarter notes for now. But you can adjust that anytime. Always remember that. Now that we have it on quarter notes, the grid, each of these vertical lines is a quarter note spacing. And when you have this grid button selected, the blue button, what it means is when you hover over the sample or whatever it is you're working on, you can drag it, and when you drag it, you see it drops into the grid formation automatically, and that's super, super useful. Because if you had slip on up here at the top left, let's switch to slip. When you drag it, it'll drag to whatever position you want without quantizing it. I guess quantizing is a bad word because I don't want to confuse you with what the real meaning of quantize is, but it is quantizing, but in another way. In other words, when you slip this out, you can put it in any position you want, and when you release the mouse button, it's now no longer synchronized to the grid. So the best way to deal with that is to click undo, Control Z on your keyboard, Control Z as in zebra, and that brings you back to the grid, and then you want to click the grid button, and that way you can move it according to the grid. So that's something that you will absolutely have to get accustomed to, because if you accidentally move things around in slip mode, you'll find that your song is going worse and worse out of synchronization with timing. So you'll want to stay in grid mode most of the time, and then every once in a while you'll need to use slip mode, and maybe I'll show you an example of that once in a while in a little bit here. So right now we've got the song starting measure 6, so let's drag this over, starting on measure 3, and now what we can do is we can bring the view, tighten up the view again a little bit, and with this selected, with the part selected, click duplicate on your keyboard. Control D is in duplicate, and you'll click that at however many times you want this to be duplicated. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We already had 1, so doing it 7 times gives you 8 copies. So now we've got all those copies, and we just press the space bar to play. Space bar is the easiest way to start and stop playback. Here's the transport controls here: play, record, stop. But the space bar is much easier. You just click it with your left hand. Now, because this is a highly synchronated sequence, I think we need to reduce the tempo. So that 125 would have been good for a less syncopated song, but double click that red arrow that points to the right, and we'll change this. You can drag it down, up or down, or you can use your keyboard to go like 110 maybe. Let's see. Let's go to 115. Double click 115 on the keyboard. 115. Okay, now, now let's move away from the drums. We'll go back to Drumvolution in a little bit, but let's talk about continuing on with a song, and how I normally do it is to just keep adding layers. I mean, I guess that's what everyone does, but I usually start with drums or piano or keyboard, whatever the solo instrument would be, or the main background instrument. In this case, we started with drums because it is a drum tutorial. And so now let's talk about adding some tracks. So let's go to track, new, stereo, instrument. So we're going to set up another instrument track, just like Drumvolution was an instrument track. An instrument track basically means a track that gives you MIDI in the lane. And so let's click create, and let's make this bass. Double click here, bass, enter. And then you click on the first insert A, multi-channel plugin. Let's instrument. Let's go for a vacuum. That's a good synthesizer, which also has some good bass synth sounds. You play it with your mouse here, and you can drop. Let's see. No, it's the wrong button. You can bring down this button to go to the bass sounds and see all the different ones, or you can simply do what we did before, which is plus and play something. Click the plus button again, play something. Motorcycle. And of course, it's easier to do if you have your keyboard right in front of you. You just click this red record enable button on the left here, and that'll make it so that you can play your MIDI keyboard. So my MIDI keyboard is way off to the right, so I'm just going to keep pressing these buttons here. Manual. Strange sound, but let's go ahead and use that. So we'll close that out. Now, if you wanted to, you could play around with the sound. These are all preset sounds, and they've got a bunch of different ones. And then once you get your once you get close, then you can play around with these knobs and dial in, change it to, if you want a different sound. We won't get into all that, because that's usually just you play around with things until you like the sound. And let's see, let's test if this is a monophonic. I think vacuum is a monophonic synth, but I can't remember. So to test if it's monophonic, you just click any key and you drag it. You can also, actually I don't think that tests it. The only way to test is to play multiple notes on your MIDI keyboard. Yeah, so I'm playing multiple notes. You can see I'm holding a bunch of notes down. So that's a monophonic sound. So monophonic sounds are cool, especially for bass, because it lets you portamento between different notes. So that can sound pretty cool. You don't always want that, but anyway, it's a cool thing. We'll go ahead and do that for this song, for this track. Now, the other thing you can do is you could turn on the click by unclicking the mute button here. That way you have a little bit of count in. You can go back to the beginning of the song by clicking this left back button, and then you can press the space bar and then get a little practice in. 1, 2, 3. All right, we'll go ahead and record something like that. And the way we do it, we're already record enabled. And we click up here. I like to be in the punch mode for record. So you right click here and you select quick punch. And what that does is it lets you punch in from the play button. If you have already your song playing, you can click punch now and it'll start recording right when you punch. So that can be useful. So let's go ahead and do that. But it also lets you just do the normal way of clicking record and then press play. So we'll go ahead and record this track. Okay, what I did was I just recorded a phrase, and because that's very useful to show how to do phrase recording and phrase copy and pasting. So before we copy and paste it, let's double click on the phrase we just recorded. So I have this set up to where when you click here in the outer rim of these three buttons, it gets you in a special mode where all three of these buttons are active, but it switches automatically back and forth between these three tools depending on what position your mouse is in over each phrase recording. So in general, when you're hovering over, you'll be in this mode, which is you can select, drag, and then move or delete things. So if I wanted to delete a section of this song, I would of this phrase, I would just kind of drag like that and then click the delete button. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to Control Undo. The other mode is the hand mode, when you go down towards the bottom, and we already showed that you can drag the whole thing. And then the other mode is the edges turn into an edge tool, and left as well. But before we get to the edges of the song, we can bring it in a little bit. But let's not go to the direct edge of the song yet, because I might have been early on the beginning note and late on the end note. So for that reason, let's get the hand tool active and then double click, and that takes you into the edit mode for that phrase. Excuse me. And now you can see the actual notes. Now, and I was early, you can see that here's the main beginning of that bar, but I played it a little bit too early, which is normal. We're all human, except us, the cyborgs. And what you want to do, all these notes are selected, so if I moved one, it would move all of them. Move up and down. We don't want to, so Control Z, and then just click anywhere outside of any of these notes to deselect all of them. Now what you can do is you can just move that first note, and since you're in grid mode, it'll click. Oh, that was the wrong grid mode. We have one over here too. Click this grid button. Now it'll fall right on the grid. And you could do that with all these notes, but a much easier way is to go and quantize it. That's an automated way of doing what I just did to this one note. So you go up here to the menu, click Event, Event Operations, Quantize. You click that. Bring this over a little bit. And now this is a pretty fast and syncopated phrase, so I probably want to stay in 16th notes. Let me show you why. If I go to whole notes and then click OK, click apply, it'll, oh, sorry, I have to select everything first. So Control A. Now let's get back to that window, Event Operations, Quantize, and you might want to memorize this, Alt-0. It's your quick keyboard shortcut. So now if I have whole notes selected as the grid, if I click apply, it's going to quantize to whole notes, so that'll screw up your entire track. So we don't want that. We click Control Z. Let's go to fourth notes is going to do the same thing. It'll move. You'll notice if it's too much movement, it's wrong. So I'm going to guess it's 16ths, but let's try 8th notes. Apply. Yeah. Too much movement. Go to 16ths and then click apply. And what you'll notice is that there's very little movement when we do that. And that should be good. So let's close this, and then we'll click here towards the beginning, before the beginning of the phrase. Click your space bar with your left hand and just hear how it sounds. Okay, what I heard a little bit of a flub there here in towards this part of the phrase. So let's click here. So this is the portamento slidey thing is cool, but not always. So what I want to do, the way it works is that any notes that are overlapped will portamento. So to get rid of that portamento briefly, temporarily, we just drag one of these over, and you want it to be the end note and this end note as well, on the end of the note. Now let's see how that sounds. I don't know why it did it here, because we're already dragged here. Now in this case we need to click slip, because we don't want it to bring it all the way over. Same thing with these. Now it sounds better. All right, and then we've got, I hit the wrong note here. So I got a note that, so this is the wrong note. Delete. Now this note is a little too short, so let's lengthen it a little bit. See, the portamento actually sounds cool between these two notes. All right, so you can see how Quantize really cleaned it up. And if you want to see all the notes at once, you just go down to the bottom of this window, bottom right, and drag it over, and then drag this thing over until you get the whole picture. If you want to, there's also a vertical adjustment here at the top right. Drag it up and down. I like to leave it about like that. And you can also play the notes here to the left. And so for instance, if you wanted to just add a note, you could click this pencil icon, and then you can just add notes wherever you want. Let's do it more strategically. There you go, like a, oh, why didn't I do it? Let's do a parabolic. It's not working. Freehand. Not sure how to do that. But you could toy around with this pencil function, and you might figure out how to do. Let's try square. Oh. Anyway, the simple way to do it is to just make sure you got slip mode. So let's see how that sounds. Go back to this mode. That was terrible. Undo, 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 undo. Anyway, you get the gist. If you wanted to go wow, you'd have to make it narrower and go like this, like really narrow. First we want to know where we're starting. So actually it's easier to click up here in this area, so you go out of the pencil mode. And I want to see where the time is. Wow! So it's right about here. Anyway, but that's only good during moments. So what we could do is we could go back to the select tool, the combination tool here. We can select all those notes and click Control X. That'll not only delete them, but it'll store them in your memory, and you'll be able to paste those later on. So now that we have a basic bass track, let's close that out. Now, since we're quantized on the first and the last notes, we can comfortably bring these edges into the beginning of the phrase, beginning of the bar, and then bring this into the end of the second bar. So now we have it like this. Now we can select it and do Control D 3 times. And then if we want to add that wow, we can do it like maybe here. Click here and then Control V for paste. V as in violin. Then we can do the same thing over here. I didn't get it perfect, but anyway, you could definitely tighten that up if you wanted to. Another thing you should know about is the controller section down here at the bottom of the edit page, and this is where you can edit control signals such as the note velocity. So this is how hard you hit each note on your MIDI keyboard, and you can see that this one is like 3/4 velocity, this one is 100% hard hit, and then you can move these however you want. Usually you want a harder hit on the very first note, so I'm going to move this up a little bit. And you notice that it'll show you the number here at the left of velocity from 0 to 100, 127 actually. And so this is 1 to 127. All right. And most of the time it doesn't sound like that. This just happens to be a really strange complex bass sound, and so that's why you're hearing that change in the timbre and certain frequencies. It's just the way the synthesizer setting is set up. So let me put that up again. Okay, so that's 100%, and let me play that. Then you can do the same with any of these. And then if you want to change a different controller, so for instance, we didn't use the sustain controller at all, the foot pedal for the piano at all on this song. So I can't really show you exactly what it looks like, but if we just click here and then click hover over controllers and sustain, you'll see that if you did have sustain switches here, you'd be able to adjust them. And another one, if you had an expression pedal, that would be here. And let's go back to velocity, because velocity is the main one that you'll be using down here. So you can edit the velocity and the controller section for any and all MIDI passages like this. And now that we're done with recording the bass, we can deselect the record enable on the left. And now we've got 8 bars, and with drums and bass. That's your basic tracks. Now we can add, let's add another synth track. Go to track, new. First, let's press Control S for save. And then track, new, stereo, instrument, create, double click that, synth, type synth, click OK. First slot A, instrument. Let's check and see if vacuum really is stereo, is polyphonic. I can't remember. So now we're doing a synth track, so we'll drop this down to leads and select any lead. And then we'll play on we'll record enable it here on the left and play multiple notes. That doesn't sound like a lead. Okay, I'm going to hold down, do 2 things at once. Yeah, as far as I can tell, this is a monophonic synth. So let's pull this thing down here, hover over this until you see that indicator, and then click and pull downward. What that does is it gives you an extra button here next to the slot and we're going to want to click this little dot, and then that'll let us change. You could go to no insert, and that'll delete it, but you don't have to do that. You can just go directly to the multi-channel plugin instrument, and let's do some of these. I know that you don't have in your collection, but I'm pretty sure you have Expand. Yeah, I installed Expand for you. Expand is a great tool. It's similar to Contact, except Contact is way better, way more powerful. Expand is a sample playback only, whereas Contact is a whole sampler, complete sampler. So let's go back to Expand and see what sound we have here. It's a pretty cool pad. Click, let's see. Here's the sounds. Let's go to Action Pads. Sounds interesting. We don't need this loop. Turn that off with a power button. Oh, here we go. So click this little tiny arrow here and go to the Action Pads. And then you click this right button to go. Maybe. Let's try it. Oops. Gotta go towards the beginning of the song. Click this left arrow here. All right, that'll work for the purposes of this. Let's bring up the level a little bit. Yeah. All right, we go back to the beginning of the song. We record it. We already have record enabled. We click the record button and then the play button. All right, let's do the same thing we did before. We can bring this back up a little bit. Double click here. Go into record enable. Go into edit mode. And then we can select these 3 notes by dragging. Actually, we have to do it one at a time. We need to go to grid mode first, and then record out. Click anywhere outside of there, and just drag each one to the beginning. Now you actually don't have to do that. Now that I think about it, you can just quantize everything. So let's undo all that, so we can select all, Control A, go to quantize, which is event operations quantize. Let's leave it on 16th. Pull it over here so we can see what changes, and click apply. That looks pretty good. All right, let's see how it sounds. All right, I played too many notes there, so I'm just going to go to the right and click and drag all 4 of these notes, and then click delete. All right, so now we're ready. We quantized everything, so there's nothing folding over over this line. If it was, that would screw up our duplicate command. So undo that. And then there's nothing over to the left of this line, which would also screw up our duplicate command, because if any of those were overlapping, what would happen is the duplicate you wouldn't, well, if you drag this over, if it was to the left, it would eliminate that note by dragging this. And if it was to the right, you would have this kind of situation where when you duplicate, it no longer lines up. See, it's too far to the right. So let's undo that, and then we'll drag this over to the true end of the phrase, of the other phrases, and now we can duplicate. All right. So now you can go in, because it's pretty boring right now with everything, with every single phrase being identical. So what you could do is you can go in and edit different phrases by clicking on this one. So this is identical to the previous one, but you can move stuff around. You could also like drag and delete a section and then replay it. So delete that. Record enable is already enabled. Click record and play. Oops, didn't go back far enough. Gotta click record and play. All right, so now it's a little bit different, that phrase. Did I screw it up? Let's see. Yeah, I forgot to do something here. So let's go in here. I'm going to copy what I just played because it was pretty cool. I'm going to Control exit so it copies but it deletes. And then I'm going to undo, Control Z. So see, I deleted too much. I shouldn't have deleted these. All right. So now what I can do is, now that I brought this back, I can delete this and then start at the same note and click Control. If you have to, why isn't it doing to the grid? Control V. Oh man, it's gonna make me play it over again. All right, no big deal. So now that we have it set up correctly, we'll go back here a little bit. Back one to the beginning of that measure. Click record and play. All right, so that gives you just a little bit more spice when you have things that are slightly different like that. And then you could go in to requantize it. It doesn't sound too bad, so we'll just leave it. Then what we can do is we can copy this over to here by clicking here, deleting, clicking there, make sure grid mode is on. You can press the Alt button on your keyboard while you're dragging this over, and that'll make a copy, and then you stop dragging when you get to that line. So now these two are the same and these two are the same, and that gives you a pattern of difference, I guess. All right, so you could keep going on and layering, however many layers you want. Let's see what we can, a nice thing to be able to do that I could show you how to do is adding samples to a song. That's very, very useful. So let's save the project, Control S. Let's click track, new. This time we're going to add 3 new tracks. And let's actually add 2 stereo tracks, and let's keep this in audio mode. And then another stereo track, and then, whoops, I made too many. And then a mono audio track. So the reason I did that is because your samples, it's sometimes hard to tell if they're stereo or mono. So we've got mono at the bottom and 2 stereo. Samples 1 And then stereo samples 2. The easiest way to add samples in Pro Tools is to go to your window button and click workspaces, bring to front. So here's your workspace. What that means is it's a browser for your whole computer, and I already have pre-selected where I have all my samples. So you need to go into your big hard drive, which I think is E. I can't remember on your computer, but it's the big one. It'll say 8 terabytes. Just don't bite. And go find your music production folder. I can't remember what I named that in your computer. Whatever it is, you want to find your samples folder, which is a huge folder right here. And then inside there you have tons of samples. Some of them are specific to different programs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to audio samples and loops and go down to sound effects. So now we have all these sound effect tracks, and it's kind of stupid that they didn't put the stereo and mono. See, what they should have done was they should have, on stereo ones, they should have given you 2 waveforms. That's the way a lot of apps work, but they didn't do that. So we don't know if they're mono or stereo. So that's why I set this up with 2 stereo tracks and 1 mono track. So let's just listen to some of these. The other thing is that samples that are note-based, like frequency instruments, like keyboards, whatever, are harder to throw into songs because they're unlikely to be in the right key. All right, so let's just play through these and listen for samples that have no key. So that's a note. That's a note. All those are notes. I guess we could add that one to the beginning. So we just hover over here, and whatever one it sticks to, it means it's mono. So that's a mono track. Even though I'm hovering over the stereo tracks, it won't stick to them. All right, so let's just put it anywhere here. Let's bring it halfway. See how that sounds. Let's turn off the click. All right, let's drag it a little bit more. Let's drag this over to the left because I don't like the tail end of it. Not beautiful, but anyway, I'm just showing you how to do this stuff. Let's bring the window up to the front again. It's kind of a pain how it does that. So what you can do is you can memorize bring to front command is Alt-J. So if you just click Alt-J on your keyboard, brings that back up the workspace. See how that sounds? It's a mono one too. What a pain. All right. So let's set up another mono track. Another easy way to set up a track is going to deselect to make sure that only this mono track is highlighted. Right click and duplicate. And you can deselect some of these stuff. I guess everything else is fine. You just want to deselect the playlist because so it doesn't copy the sample. All right, so now Alt-J. Let's drag that down here. Let's see if that's in rhythm. Nope, it's not. You could fix that. I forget how to do it. Let's delete it for now, since we'll make that another tutorial. Let's keep on looking for samples. Drag that over. I think we go to time stretch is what we need. So we select that sample. We go to Audio Suite. Time shift. And then we can move this slider. It needs to be slower actually, so we go down in speed and then click render. Let's see how that sounds. That was too much. Go to like 96, 97% render. Perfect. All right. We can put a cool sound effect on here by clicking the first slot, plug in. Actually, I don't know if you have this sound effect. It is sound field auto pan. And yeah, the first setting is good. Didn't have to play with it at all. Just auto pans left and right. All right, so we can bring that back down. Control J. Let's find some more samples. Now we already know what the adjustment is for these, so we could add some more and adjust them. Let's add it to this one. And then we'll go to Audio Suite, pitch shift, time shift. Oh man, it moved it. I think it was 97%. Render. Let's bring it on the beat, and then we can. A little handy trick so you don't have to go into the fader. This is the track fader for each channel. It's this little fader button here. That's the way that most people will do it, but there's also a fader on each sample. And that's really handy because this one to the left is already loud enough, but we want to make this one louder. So you click that little tiny fader, bring it up. Oh, let's see how it sounds. Still too fast, so let's undo, undo, undo. Now we know we want it at the beginning of the phrase. Let's go to Audio Suite, pitch shift, time shift, and we want like 97, maybe 96.59. Much better. Now we can bring up the volume. You could even duplicate those DDD so that it brings these two up to a new level of sound by doing that. And then let's keep looking. Alt J. That's a stereo track, so I'll put it like here. Let's see how that sounds. Well, those samples aren't working down here. Let's just get rid of those. Not sure what happened. Oh, I know what happened. The end is not, I forgot to adjust the end to be one, exactly one measure. It was a little bit over. So yeah, we want that on the top of the. And then we can add a bigger delay even than that. It already has a built-in delay to that sample, but let's add a bigger one. Delay. Let's do a multi-delay. Those are cool. We'll copy it, but hold down the Alt button while we drag it. Oops, I went too far. That'll make another one. All right, and if you accidentally select a short selection like that with your mouse and you press play, it's only going to play that little thing. And you say, oh, I have to get used to whenever that happens, you just click anywhere, any space. Okay, now we're going to talk about extending the drum part. We'll circle back now to the drums. We don't have to, if you wanted to make changes to the actual Drumvolution part in big ways, you could click the contact plugin and pull up Drumvolution again. Usually it's not necessary. If you do that, you'll notice that when you try to play it, the playback doesn't work anymore. You just need to press this this note button down here at the bottom right, disable it, and that way it'll play again, because it has to switch back into two different modes. One mode is playing the drum track here, and the other mode is playing it in Pro Tools. So that's what that little note button does. If you do make changes here, just remember you have to click again this MIDI export button, let it turn green, and then re-drag that to the drum track. There's one thing I forgot to mention about Drumvolution. Here, this line of lights, this is what you call the classic drum machine mode way back in the 80s. This is how drum machines worked. It's similar to this, only it's more limited. So this whole line of buttons is like one of these rows, and it works based on which instrument you have selected. So if I click kick, you'll hear the kick, and then you can start programming it here, and you'll notice that this program setup matches this one. The only difference is in this one you only have two different volume levels. In this one you could go up and down with total variability in volume, but most people are okay with just two different volume levels. So that's what this yellow light means. It means it's half volume for this. Full volume means red. So you can see that this one is full volume, and this follows the same pattern as this. So if I wanted to add, for instance, another kick here, you could do it down here, and you see it added it here. So I clicked this one, and it's yellow, so I added a half volume trigger. And if I click it again, the 4, that means the 4th quarter note in the measure. It'll go to full volume, and if I click it again, it'll go down to 0. And so yeah, that's just I personally prefer to use this one. And then remember also that you can you can expand each instrument with using this plus button, so that if you want to get even more tight control over the volume, you just click the expand, and now you can really get some control over volume. Whoops. And yeah. So let's exit out of here, and I'm going to show you a totally different way of recording drums and drum parts. I like Drumvolution when you're setting up the original drum track, the basic drum track for the song, but there's another way to do things, and that is to record directly into the track. So this is the drum track, and what you can do, there's a couple different ways to do it. The first way is to use MIDI merge. Kind of forgot where that's located. Let's go up here in the window and click transport, and the MIDI merge is here. If I hover over it, yeah, it says MIDI merge, and blue means it's on, gray means it's off. So MIDI merge means that you can keep recording over your existing MIDI notes, and it'll just keep adding notes. If you had this off, MIDI merge off, as soon as you clicked record, it would record only the new notes and erase the old ones, so you don't want that. So I'm going to enable MIDI merge, and then we can close that. And what you can do is, on your MIDI keyboard, almost all the drums are in just one octave. I'm going to click the record enable on the Drumvolution track here, so that I can play my MIDI keyboard, and all the sounds are from C1 to C2 on the keyboard, and that's going to be the same with almost all MIDI keyboards, although there are some exceptions, and you can usually change the octave, adjust the octave in your MIDI keyboard using your MIDI keyboard's menu. Usually you don't have to touch that. You just play the different notes on your keyboard until you find the drum sounds, and they're always at the lower end of the register for your left hand. Most people will play drums with both hands. So, for instance, I usually play, if I want to play a whole track, a drum track with my keyboard, I'll usually play the kick and the snare with my left hand, and then the hi-hat with my right. So we'll do so here's an example. Kick, snare. So that was just playing with two hands. You don't have to do that either. It's much easier to just play one or two notes at once. And because you have MIDI merge, you're able to just go over and over and over. So you could even play one note over and over and over again. Another thing you can do, let's digress for a second. You can double click using the hand mode, double click the drum track. And you can also add drums. I already showed you how to do that using the pencil key. So you can just add hits wherever you want. And you can also move those hits around. I'm going to remove one. Go back to the 3-in-1 tool, and then you can move that drum around in time, and you can change the sound. You see how it's all from C1 to C2 to just before C2. So that's just one octave, not including C2. So you put that hit wherever you want. Actually, you need to undo that. In time and in note line. Then you can duplicate it. Let's say you wanted a bunch of these. Let's say you wanted a bunch of these sounds. This is I don't know what that is called, but no, it's this one. It's like a hand clap. Let's see, which one did I just move? Okay. So let's say you wanted to do a bunch of these. You could set it right there and then press Control D. That doesn't work. Because you can't. But you can just keep adding them with a pencil tool. Those are quarter notes, and so here's how it would sound. And then you could select all those, Control C, and then select here at the beginning of that measure and Control D. And then you could keep doing that if you wanted all those to have. I forgot to, it's not putting it in the grid mode. I'm not sure why. But anyway, you can drag those, should be able to drag those over. So they're quantized. Yeah. Just select them all and then drag them just a little bit until they're quantized in. So this is how that would sound. Not sure what happened there. Anyway, I'm going to undo it. You can keep undoing for quite a while. So that's the way to edit drums and add using the edit mode. But anyway, I do that sometimes, and then but usually when I come to this this juncture in a song creation, I usually prefer to add a new track and a new drum track, MIDI drum track, which is gonna have just drum fills in it. It's kind of hard to do, so bear with me here. What you want to do is you want to create a new instrument track, new stereo instrument. And in this case, which is kind of unusual, you're gonna set this track to play this track. So this instrument one track, I'm gonna call this fills, drum fills, is gonna be the trigger, an extra trigger for the Drumvolution track. And the way you do that is you pull these down a little bit until you have all the stuff. Yeah, there we go. All the options. And then you want to start playing around with these features. You want to click that and click contact MIDI in channel 1, because in this case you want to play the same MIDI channel. Now if you wanted to put more instruments in contact, for instance, you can do that too. You can so this is just one instrument, and you could add another instrument to contact. I've actually never done that with Drumvolution running. Let's see. Not sure how to do that. Anyway, maybe up here. All right, let's forget about that. So we're going to, just select contact MIDI, contact 7 MIDI in 1, select the same MIDI channel 1, which is, it means it's going to keep triggering the same group that this one is triggering. And then you want to click this, sorry, no input, you want to change that to plug-in, contact, and then the top option. So it's the top option for both. So, and then you want to turn off the record enable for Drumvolution and turn on the record enable for the fills. Now let's test it on the MIDI keyboard, make sure it's working. Yep. So now you see how the volume is showing in this track. So this track is just MIDI. This track is both MIDI receiving and audio. So you can see the audio there. So now that you have that set up, what you can do is you can play wherever you want to within the song and just start recording. Just start adding drum fills. You can add whatever you want. Like this. I usually add fills at the end of the second measure, every second measure or so. So let's start at the second measure. We'll just keep it running and I'll keep recording. Whoops. I forgot to press record. So here we go. We're going to start at the beginning of the second measure, and I'm going to press record enable and play to start recording, and then I'll start playing towards the end of every second measure. And sometimes it's good to stop there and just kind of narrow this down a little bit. Let's listen to that. Yeah, I don't even have to quantize it. Sometimes it's good to quantize. Sometimes it's good to leave it unquantized. If it sounds good already, I think it's usually best to leave it unquantized because that keeps the human feel. All right, and then you could cut and paste this by alt dragging. I mean, you could copy it by alt dragging. Drag it there, and it'll be the same fill, or drag it over here. And then we'll record a new one here, starting it. Now, if you're already playing, you can, with your space bar, you can press this punch button to start recording whenever you want. So I'm going to press the space bar, then I'm going to press the punch. Yeah, that one wasn't quite as on the mark, so let's listen to that. I think it's excuse me. I think that was good enough. And then you can do the same thing. You could alt drag that over to here. Let's see how that sounds. All right, and so that's how you add drums, and you can keep on filling in things wherever you want. You could let the whole track run and just record little notes here and there. Basically whatever you want to do. And yeah. Now let's talk about so now you have a part of a song that goes from about 5 seconds to 35 seconds roughly. So you have about 35 seconds of audio, not enough for a song. So what I usually would do in this case is, if you want to do it quick, is just start at the bottom here and drag up diagonally. And you want to include the sample at the bottom. Usually you want to include that. And then you'll drag that over using the alt drag. So you click alt with this. All this is already selected. Before you click anything else, you press the alt button with your left hand, and then you drag everything over, and you want to put it at the beginning. See with the yellow mark at the beginning of a measure. That way it starts right at the beginning of the measure. Now, we've got one measure of sound. I'm sorry, one section of empty space. Let's see how long that is. 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. So that's 2 measures. And then you can fill that up with sound. And you can do that either using edit mode or just play some notes. So let's just play some notes. We'll start here. We'll click. I think I'll play. Just find whatever you want on your. I'll just do like that. I'm playing that with my right hand. And just press punch and play. Start playing at the end of the measure. Okay, one thing I forgot to do is I'm going to undo, and I need to turn on the click track so I can hear I don't go off rhythm. Let's do that again. Now we have the click. We'll hear that when it's empty space. So punch, play. And I'll start playing now. And of course, it sounds like there's more space needed, really. So let's undo that. I didn't play it very well. Let's give ourselves a little more space. We'll drag across. You can only do it when it's in that mode right there. And again, you want to be in grid mode so that you can drag it and it'll automatically quantize. Let's give it one more, actually 2 more measures. All right, now let's do I'm going to Control S for save. And then we still have record enabled for the fill. So let's just start here and I'll just start playing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quantize that. So I'm going to double click. It's already selected, so you don't have to drag select. And you notice only these notes that I just played are selected. The other ones are not. So you don't have to worry about quantizing those. You go into audio, you go into event operations, quantize. In this case, those are quarter notes, so you can go down to quarter, click apply. Whoops, those are 1/8 notes. Sorry. 1/8, apply. You see they only moved a little bit. And then what you can do is you can drag this over and drag this over. Whoops, it's not working. That's strange. I was gonna alt copy this by alt dragging it, and then you can extend this outward, but it's not working for some reason. So I'm gonna delete that, and I'm just gonna double click here, and I'm gonna alt drag from here. So you notice there's multiple ways to do things in Pro Tools. So now we have all 8 measures. Let's something missing here. Let's test that. Something weird happened. Let's undo. Double click. Oh, I know what happened. For some reason it missed these 2 notes. So we got to select. Let's see. Yeah, it missed those 2 notes. I think that's because we had a trailing over here. This section was trailing. We should have brought this in. But since we didn't, we just double click here, select all of those notes that we want to copy, and then alt drag it. And you notice you have to make sure you're in the right vertical and horizontal position. And now we have it right. So we can test it here. Now we can turn off the click, because this is our click. This is our new click, our new reference anyway. And then you can add stuff in there, whatever you want, and keep extending your song out. So for instance, let's say we want to add an audio track. So let's go track, new, mono, a microphone track, mono, audio. So pretty much you leave these settings the same, create. Let's bring this down to the bottom. And we'll name this vocal, double click it, name it vocal. And I'm going to show you how to set up a vocal track now. On the very first slot, you want to go plug in. Since it's mono, since this is a mono track, it only gives you one option instead of the other stereo track giving you multiple mono and stereo options, multi-channel and mono, multi-mono. So on this one, since it's mono, you just drop it down, plug in, and this is the way that I do it, and this is probably the way most people do it. You want probably an EQ first, or some kind of an EQ. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up in 7-band EQ. And then for the second one, I'm going to go, second slot is going to be dynamics. BF76 is a good compressor. And what that does is it adjusts the volume level depending on how loud your vocal is. So it's a dynamic volume, really. So if I click vocal here, check, check, 1, 2. Now you're going to notice it sounds strange because I'm recording the microphone through the screencast software. I could go into my audio software for my microphone processor, which is this one. And I could mute this track. Check, 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 check. Yeah, so that fixed that problem. Close that out. Now we're listening to my voice through Pro Tools, and you can see that every time I talk, this level meter goes down. So what it's doing is every time I talk, it lowers the level and then brings it back up slowly. And that gives you that compressed sound that most songs have. And you can adjust things here and there. I usually like to bring this one down, attack for vocals, bring it down to 1. And I usually bring this up a little bit more, like that. Check, 1, 2. All right, so that's a pretty classic vocal compression. And then you could add a de-esser because S is pretty loud. S's are loud once you have compression. So you can go plug in. We're looking for a de-esser. I forget where it is here. I think it's in dynamics. Oh, here it is. Dyne 3 de-esser. Now what this does is it dynamically reduces the S sound or any sibilant sound. S is the most sibilant. And you just adjust this range a little bit. Like that. See, now it's much less sibilant. Here's where the off. Here's where the on. So that's probably too much, and you want to get it somewhere halfway in between. All right, that's pretty good. And then after that, After that, it's whatever effects you want. Now, you could put effects here, but I prefer to use an effects track because if you do it here, it's mono, so you can't do like left and right ping pong delay, which sounds cool. So let's make a new track. We'll call it effects. Let's make sure it's stereo and aux input. Aux input is a special kind of a track, which lets you set up effects. So this is another, let's call this, double click the white section and call it FX. And we'll set up a delay, multi-delay. And then we'll set up, close that out. Let's bring the mix up a little bit since this is an effects track. We'll bring it up quite a bit. Then let's add a reverb. All right, and that mixes way up too. So notice we don't hear it yet because we're not routed into it. So let's route it using the send A through E. We'll just send a bus. I already have the bus somewhat set up, but I'm gonna use bus 9 through 10, 9 and 10 really. It's just left and right for that bus. So I'm gonna select that 9-10, and then you can right click this and rename it effects or whatever you want. And now this is sending, but we still have to receive it here. So we go here to the no input bus FX. And now what we need to do is we need to increase the effects send. So we click it and we have to turn this up. And as we turn it up, we start hearing that effect. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And you can play around with those effects. Bring it down a little bit. You can also turn it up and down after you record. So now that we have all that set up, you can just press go to where you want to start recording. Let's just record here in the segue, the empty part, because that's where we need something the most. So we can press punch and play. I had to stop because I'm going to undo, and it started recording here as well, so we need to turn this off. Fills was record enabled. Whatever you have record enabled will record. Okay, so now we have just vocal record enabled, so let's press, make sure we're here at the, close to it, punch, play. So we won't do anything then. Now we can talk and sing. You got it. All right, that was stupid, but shows you what you can do. Then you go to the left-hand side of it, and you get that little bracket symbol. Drag that over to get rid of the talking. I was talking there. Now you see it clipped it a little bit, so you can go into slip mode and bring it over to the left just a hair. All right, and go back to grid. Okay, let's listen to that. Oh, I gotta unclick the vocal track in order to hear it. In order to hear playback. Now we can talk and sing. You got it. All right, pretty ridiculous sounding, but still, that shows you what you can do. So let's disable this and re-enable it from, so we don't hear that We'll re-enable it over here in my mixer, and this is the mixer for my audio interface. Every audio interface is different, so I'm going to unmute this and then close it out and then unrecord enable. So now we're listening to my vocal through the other interface, the audio interface. All right, so that shows you how you can record vocals. Let's bring these up a little bit. We don't need all that space anymore. We can bring the effects minimized. Now, the last thing we need to do is, let's say we're done with our recording, at least for the day. I want to Control S, save it. And we need to add a mixer, a master track. And what that does is it brings all these channels into one single stereo track where you can adjust the whole bus, it's called. The bus means all tracks. So right now they're all going to output 1, 2, output 1, 2, output 1, 2, which is kind of the same thing, but you can't add anything to output 1, 2 without creating a master track. So let's create a master track. Go to Track, New, Stereo, Master Fader, Create, and put it at the bottom. It already put it at the bottom. Give yourself a little space. And then what you need to do on the master track is sometimes, not always, you can add another dynamic effect, like instead of using the BF76, I like this compressor. They're both compressors, but this BF76 is particularly good for vocals, whereas this Dyne 3 compressor limiter is particularly good for the bus. So we'll select that, and we don't like this extreme change here, so we'll adjust the knee. And then maybe adjust this threshold a little bit. So what that does is it takes all these inputs, runs it through this runs all of them through this master track, and then goes through every effect sequentially, and then sends it to this volume fader here. And you can adjust the volume like that, or you can press the press the control button and add control points for changing the volume dynamically, like this, like that. So that's helpful in many cases. Not I would say not usually though. So I want to undo all that. But you can also add multiple compressors. So for instance, this compressor that I just made is a mellow compressor. It's just doing a little bit of work. So that does one thing. It just rides the volume slowly. We can add another compressor, which is the same compressor, but we set it up differently. Dyne 3 compressor limiter. So on the second compressor, I'm going to keep this extreme change, but I'm going to bring it up to the top where it's like threshold 2.4, somewhere around there. And I'm going to bring this attack down and the release down. And what that does is, and I'm going to bring the ratio all the way up as max. So this is called a brick wall compressor when you set it up this way. And what that means is that if you had something in your recording that was too loud, that would normally blast out your recording, blast out the speakers, this will take care of it. It'll bring the volume down whenever something hits too hard. So that saves your speakers if from being hit too hard. That can blow speakers if you're recording too loud on different tracks. And this is a good way to prepare it for mastering. Mastering just means it's ready. It's more ready than it was before, really. That's pretty much it. I mean, you could add an effects here, like if you have a track that you want reverb on everything, You could go with the effects track, or you could just put reverb on everything here, multi-track, reverb, but usually you don't want to do that. So now we could pretty much say that we're ready to output the song, to export the song to stereo, regular stereo track that you can burn to a CD, play for friends. Right now you can't play this for friends because it's in multi-track format, and all of your friends only have 2 speakers. So you want to export it through this master fader for 2 speakers only. Before we do that, let's bring this window inward a little bit by dragging here, and so we want to be able to see the whole song. We still only have 1 minute of music, so you could select everything, alt drag it again, I think the better way would be undo, select just this section, and alt drag that. It's hard to get it exactly right. So you see we missed something here. We missed those same 2 notes. So let's click outside here. Drag this over, and we're going to have to add those 2 notes with a pencil key. Not sure why. Let's see if that sounds right. Not sure why it's not playing. I think I need to restart Pro Tools. It's starting to act a little bit weird. Anyway, I think we have it pretty much right. So now we extended the song way out. So now it's 2 minutes. So that's long enough to be a song, arguably. So let's bring this in a little bit more so we can see the whole song again. And then what we do is we drag up here, we leave a little space for an echo. So let's say here, and then drag it all the way to the very beginning of the song, which is the first sample. I went a little bit too far, so I can drag this to the right a little bit. Actually, what I want to do is go into slip mode and drag it just a hair before the beginning of this sample. That sample's the beginning of the song. So now this is your in point and your out point. In point at the beginning of the song, out point at the end. We probably have too much here. Probably bring that in. And now what we're going to do is export it. Let's click Control S, save the song one last time. We'll go File, Bounce to, Disk. And then you can put it wherever you want and choose this directory, wherever you like to put your personally recorded songs. I like to put mine in music production, songs. Anyway, you choose your folder, and then you after you get to the folder you want, you can either create a new folder at that time or click use the current folder. You name it Drumvolution 5. You choose whether you want WAV or MP3, and you can choose the MP3 specifics, and then you just click bounce, and it'll take about, for this kind of song with this many tracks, takes usually the exact length of your song. So this is a 2-minute song. It'll take 2 minutes to export it. It'll play it while you're exporting. And I'm not going to do that right now because what I want to show you one last thing, and that is if you want to make a template, because remember, it's time consuming to set up all these tracks and set up all the inserts. And so what you can do is you can make a template to where you can use the same setup for however many songs you want in the future. So you go to File, you already saved it, so that's fine, you got it saved. You go to, in this case, since you already saved it, now this is a dangerous thing to do, so don't do this unless you are sure that you saved it. You want to drag, you already have everything selected, so you delete everything. So now make sure you don't click Control S, because that would erase all of your song. So like I said, that's why this is a dangerous thing to do. Anyway, you go to File, Save as Template. You put it in whatever category you want. You can add a category and say Mine, Drumvolution Template. You could take away the 5, just Drumvolution Template, and click OK. And then what you want to do is you want to close it so that you don't accidentally save it and erase your whole song that you just made. So you select File, Close Session, Don't Save. You have to click Don't Save. Remember, you already saved it. So now, if you want to start a new song, you just click File, New Session, Create Session from Template, and go drag this down to Mine, Drumvolution, leave this the same as it is, and click OK. And then you select whatever folder you want. Let's make a Drumvolution 6. Copy that. Click Enter 2 times to go into that folder, and then paste it here, Drumvolution 6, or you could type it. Click Save, and this is going to pull up a whole new song based on that exact same template. So you're ready to go. You just click here, Drumvolution, open up Drumvolution, change it, whatever you want to do. Change the tempo here. Click bass, record a bass track, change the bass sound. That's a weird one. Anyway, that saves a bunch of time when you're creating multiple tracks. You already have your vocal track set up with all those effects. You already have your effects track set up, routed. So that's a big time saver. All right, so that's pretty much it. I could have shown you some more stuff, but this already is a huge tutorial, way over an hour long. I think that's well enough. Yeah, I think you're good to go for getting started with recording music. Good luck. Love you.